All right, so we are doing the linebacker group. At the end of this episode, I'll also do the real grade for the Houston Texans and look at their 2017 draft. So before we get started with the linebacker group, number one, I'll say that this group isn't super talented, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But even past that, as I've talked about many of these episodes, as I go through these position groups and I talk a little bit about the position and evolution and where we sit, I've talked about the running back position, and we've seen that come to fruition. We've seen it come back to being valuable, and now we've seen it even going back the other way. So we know exactly what that conversation looks like. I've talked about the same idea with receivers, starting to see that a little bit more. Tight ends as well. Linebackers, to me, are getting to that point-ish. It's a little different. So with the offensive guys, a lot of times it's not schematic. A lot of times it's just the nature of the position. Like with running backs, we say you got a real good O-line. And a running back has good physical skills. Like you can find them later in the draft and they can be good. With receivers, it's just the fact that there's a lot of ways to win as a receiver. And so you're not really pigeonholed to players with a certain skill set. And so that becomes, it makes it easier to find them in different rounds. With tight ends, it's more of this, a little bit of the schematics of how the game is played, but overall, they're just big bodied, and that's what you need as far as a guy that understands how to use their leverage and win in those situations. With linebackers, it's not so much the talent, because I don't think that's changed. Of course, like any position, you can find a good player in a later round. But a lot of times with linebackers, you're going to find the better players in the higher rounds because the drop-off in athleticism is so different, especially now. So it's a weird mix of things. Number one, it's the way linebackers play. And that's just the schematics of the game. So before, you had very distinct positions. Weak side, middle, strong side, all did different things. You had this prevalence of the 3-4 and the way it was used, and that really changed the dynamic of that type of edge player and the strong side backer. Then you had the injunction of the nickel defense, where it's just really big now. And so that really changed linebackers, period, because now you don't really work in a 3-person tandem. It's more of a 2-person tandem, and the makeup is different of those linebackers. Now you're at a point where linebackers can't and just don't go downhill. And so what you need out of a linebacker is totally different. And I was thinking about this while I used to love watching linebackers. That was one of my favorite positions because it was just like the culmination of everything on defense. You had to be really smart. I used to love the whole thing about it. Maybe that's being a Bears fan and, having great linebacker legacy, but I just really loved it. And then the years went on. I was like, this is boring. And I realized, it wasn't that I was getting bored with linebackers, it's that they changed. And so now being 220 pounds is okay as a linebacker. Back then, you could not be that because you would get destroyed. And now it's just all about playing in space. So now they don't care too much that you can't take on a block and get off a block. They don't care too much that you can't blow a fullback up in a hole. They don't care that you can't make a play, tackle for loss. They care that you can go from the middle of the field to the sideline. They care that you could chase down a bubble screen. They care that you can play in space. And so it's completely changed. And then on top of that, the RPO stuff now, which in the NFL is a glorified play action, but the way they use it, it nullifies linebackers, just to be honest. Not just the RPO stuff, but a lot of the spread stuff. You can't be downhill. And there was a time where it was like, I was a guard read type person. I'm like, you got to read the guard. You got to read the guard. It's going to take you to the play. Guard is going to take you to the play. And there was people like, no, you got to read the backfield, the triangle, the flow, whatever. And so people used to debate on it, but you read your keys and it took you to the play. Now, I can't say that's true. A lot of the rules that I learned as a coach for linebackers, as far as guard reads and keys, it would get you, and it wouldn't be wrong all the time, but it would get you wrong a good amount of the time, because linemen, as much as anything, can be a decoy. And offense, they just very, the jet sweeps with the slot, the running back motion, the bubble look after the play, the RPO stuff, like everything's a decoy. And so even with the lineman, they can really set up a decoy. The lineman is zone blocking one way and the play is not even going that way. And so as a linebacker, you pull the trigger like you used to be taught, and now you're compromised. But really, if you don't pull the trigger, there's nobody else there, because again, it's all nickel and spread out defense. Nobody's sitting in the box. And so now if you don't pull the trigger, you're not, they're going to get to the third level. And so linebackers in no man's land a lot of times, and they just aren't as effective as they used to be schematically. So, and this is coming from a person that's on a team that took a linebacker in the top 10 recently in the draft. And it's just like, yeah, they're good. They can be good, have good stats. They can be nice to have. But I look at the impact of our top 10 linebacker. I look at the impact of even the all-pro linebackers like a Bobby Wagner, who's one of the best, and what the team is what still happens to the team, even with having an all-pro linebacker. And same thing with the Panthers. I look at the Cowboys and how quickly you can be these amazing linebackers and then look a whole entirely different way. And so I just don't think it's the same. And maybe I'm feeling this time because it's not a lot of linebackers to talk about, but I just wanted to get that out of the way, because we got three guys that I want to look at and talk about. But honestly, to me, it's just it's very different, and it's not really worth it a lot of times for a high pick. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into these linebackers. So number one, we're starting with Isaiah Simmons out of Clemson. And yes, I am labeling him as a linebacker for now. Now, we all know about Isaiah Simmons. If you are paying attention, this is very much a hybrid. From what I understand, was a former safety, transition to linebacker, but they played him in what some would call a star linebacker position, which is kind of a glorified nickel. But they used him very interestingly. They did a lot of bracket coverage. And so you'll see him in the middle of the field, kind of like a free safety. And the other two safeties are on the other side of him. And so it's bracket because you got corner backed up by safety, corner backed up by safety. And then there's a third safety in the middle of the defense that's behind the linebackers. And so it's definitely something that they took a little bit from the Jalen Ramsey playbook when he was at Florida State. Not to that extent, because they didn't play bracket that much, but definitely this idea of getting this linebacker in a space where he can be the nickel defender, he can be a deep guy, he can be a off-the-ball linebacker with a little extra protection. And so it was kind of like being a third-level linebacker for him a lot of times. And so they use him different ways. They put him on the edge. So he's done a lot. Very much a top-notch athlete. Really good movement skills. Former track athlete at Clemson as well. So, yeah, there's a lot that goes into Simmons. And it is an I guess we can have this conversation, whatever. We got time. It's going to be interesting to see, because as much as I say versatility equals value, what we've seen with a lot of these defenders is that sometimes it hurts them when you don't have a true position. Because outside of Troy Polamalu, I don't know any players that really just joker around like that, as they call it. I don't know that there's that X factor guys like, oh crap, he's lined up outside on the edge. Oh crap, he's covering the receiver at corner. Oh crap, he's in the middle of the safety. I don't know that NFL coaches are comfortable doing that. And so there's that. And then you're at a elite level in the NFL where you got to be highly skilled. I mean, there's the argument that you could say, well, Jalen Ramsey, we thought could have been playing some safety or in the box or doing a lot more than he has, but he's been at corner. He's been a good corner, but at the end of the day, you look at what Jalen was in Florida State and what he does now, and it's just like, it takes a lot to be elite at one position. And then even Kyle Fuller, I think a lot of people might forget, the man played linebacker for a season. The Chicago Bears corner played linebacker for a season at VTech. I think it was his last season because they had injuries. And it was just like, man, yeah, this guy's built to be a safety, or he could do a lot of different things. He does exactly the same thing all the time at corner. And so it's nice to think of all these things, but I don't know that it's always translated. I think of a lot of people, Budda Baker, who is now getting into his own, but they don't move him around like that. Definitely Minkah Fitzpatrick, where it just, I think they really tried to play around with him in Miami, and they were just bad, but I don't think it ever clicked. And from the little bit I've seen with the Steelers, he's definitely in a much more traditional role. And then Anthony Barr, another guy Isaiah Simmons reminds me of. Anthony Barr rarely rushes the passer, like straight up. Like he blitzes, they do that stuff. But he's a true linebacker. And there was a point where it was just like, this dude's an edge defender. And you could do some cool things with him, but he's an edge defender. And it's like, no, they really made him a true linebacker. Khalil Mack, now he's been in many systems and they have moved him. But on a play-to-play basis, he's just an edge rusher. And so I look at Isaiah Simmons, and I think watching Clemson, he was used more creatively than a lot of these other guys were in college. But I just don't know that continues in the NFL. And so for me, I think, like Minkah, I think he is your nickel. I think he's your nickel / matchup guy. So if instead of bringing in an extra player, or, a different player as the nickel defender, I think he's the nickel defender. And if I'm playing a Travis Kelce or something, and now he's my matchup guy, so, okay, you now I bring in my nickel who plays one side, and I tell Simmons, okay, you match up with the guy that we're trying to take out, Kelce or Mike Evans or whoever. And so that's what I think he is. But I do think he does have upside as an edge blitzer, so you could use him there. But I don't know, man. I just haven't seen defenses move too much because, honestly, offenses move quickly, and it's a lot to set up. And so I don't know that they're going to move him around like that. But what I do know, he's got good skills, really good range from that middle safety position. So it shows you that if you're talking about in the short area, he should have really good range. I don't think he's super aware. I think he covers green grass and looks at the quarterback a lot, but he does, when he sees a route, he will reroute it or match it up into man. But I think he's got to be coached up there. I think his man coverage ability his technique needs to be coached up, but his potential is out of this world. He's got really long arms. He's really quick. And so it'd be interesting to see what type of man matchups they give him. So I like all that potential. Change of direction, gave him a 4.5. Closing speed, I gave him a 4. Run through. So run through for a linebacker is how you fill the gap, how you come downhill to make a play. Almost no one has a good run through anymore because, again, they can't pull the trigger. But for a safety, if we're talking pure safety, really good. Really comes down and fills the alley and makes a hit. Not like a big hitter, but he definitely is not scared to help in the run game. So if he is a full-time safety, I think that mentality helps. As a linebacker, again, I think it's 3.5 because it is more of a last support type thing where he needs to be the aggressor if he's going to be a stacked linebacker. Level 4 motor. Level 3.5 tackler, like I said, some good open field ability, but not a hitter. And level 2.5 play recognition. Again, I don't think as a linebacker, he diagnoses plays that well. Sometimes he really seems to be thrown off by movement and completely out of position. So a lot to be taught on the mental side if he's going to be a stacked linebacker. But overall, a very intriguing prospect, and we'll see what happens with him. Okay, moving on to Patrick Queen out of LSU. Interesting, like at first it was just Murray and that was it, and then these guys started popping up out of nowhere. Simmons, people didn't really know what he was, but it was just kind of Kenneth Murray. But then Patrick Queen, all of a sudden I see him in like top 15 talk. So out of LSU, I really like him. Spark plug, gamer. You could tell he gets fired up. All that good stuff. 6'1", 227 now. This is the team that just had Devin White go as a top first-round pick as well. And so it's hard to – because, like, I see 227, 6'1", I'm like, that's too little. Like, not that 6'1 is a pretty good height, but I'm just like, that's a little too light. But, again, it's a different league, and so I can't knock him too much for that. But it does show in his game. He's not afraid of contact. He will attack blocks, which is good. You want that mentality, but he can be moved. He can be swallowed up by these linemen. So there's something that you got to think about as well. And so I think for me, when you're talking about the run game, that's probably the biggest thing I look at is like, how do you take on blocks? And so you got a guy like Isaiah Simmons who rushes off the edge, and he's not like a pass rusher, but he's used to being in those weeds. And so when you get him against linemen in space as a linebacker or safety, he's more comfortable. And so, like I said, Queen, I like that he attacks blocks, but a lot of times I can see him being swallowed up. Blitzer, not great explosion, absolutely plays with his hair on fire, wants to get to the quarterback. That type of effort is just going to make him even that much better and get him some cleanup sacks. So I like that. His coverage, pretty average to me as far as zone. Now he's quick. Now a lot of this is about movement skills. That's what you want to see, and then they'll coach up the rest. But I think he's definitely quick enough to get to any zone you need him to. But he does stare down the quarterback, covers green grass, not super aware. And I like his coverage against running backs and tight ends. The problem is, again, 6'1", 227. If you get him in a 50-50 situation, he's going to lose. But as far as those quick backs and, those running back routes, I think he's really good at covering those in man coverage. So I kind of like his man coverage on running backs better than his zone coverage, which isn't always the case. So, overall, I say he's an all-around linebacker. Again, he's got tenacity. He's got definitely some athleticism that I think is that's what they're looking for these days, and that's why people are talking about him in the top 15. But level 4, change of direction. Level 4, closing speed. Level 3.5, run through. But when he wants to get it, he can get it. He can come downhill. Level 4.5 motor, level 4 tackler, and level 4 play recognition. And I hesitate to say 5 because I just think about the linebackers of the past, and it's just not the same. But in actuality, in these day and ages, he's probably more up there towards a 5 in play recognition. He really does get to the ball. And like, they don't read and they sift way too much and hop around. But even still, he gets to the ball. And so I do think his play recognition is a lot better than a lot of other guys that I've seen. So overall, again, I don't know that I'm going top 15. I don't know that I'm going first round for a linebacker anymore. But I definitely think compared to the other prospects, he has that athleticism and energy that a lot of teams want at linebacker today. All right, so let's go to Kenneth Murray out of Oklahoma, who was at first the top guy, and I can understand why. Definitely a chase linebacker to me. Pretty much like Patrick Queen, where he is very athletic, very energetic, very much a gamer. I like it. Kind of the same thing with Queen. He's a little bit bigger, but still, I think him taking on blocks is above average. He's physical, but I think he can be moved. He's a little lighter, and I do think he can clean up his technique. So it's not the best when people, when those linemen get down, heel and get on him. I don't think he's winning a whole lot of matchups. So there's something that you got to consider as well. Like him as a blitzer, very explosive, kind of relentless, but he doesn't really have any moves. That's the thing. And I haven't really seen him pull any moves besides just kind of running and trying to get around the block. A little bit of hand fighting, but I think he needs to really polish some of his pass rush techniques. Otherwise, you're just talking about a pure, I'm going to get a sack on a blitz rather than because the blitz set me up to get the sack rather than I'm going to create the sack. So there's something to look at. I like his coverage ability. Very quick, can get out to where he needs to get to in zone coverage. But I didn't really see that he's that aware. Kind of like most linebackers, just kind of sitting in space. His man coverage, I think he can go up against running backs. I just don't see him being physical enough with NFL tight ends. But I don't know. He's a dog, so I think he could learn it. But just from what I watch, I would say more suited to cover running backs out of the backfield than putting him on any tight ends in man coverage. Yeah, and the same thing with Queen. If it's a 50-50 ball, I don't see him out rebounding any of these tight ends. So I don't know that he's super value added in that way. But I gave him a 3.5 change of direction. I think he's more explosive in a straight line. And I've talked about this before. You can be fast in a straight line and not necessarily have the best hips. Level 4 closing speed, level 3.5 run through, level 4.5 motor, level 3 tackler. I might be a little lower because I didn't like his tackling. He tackles pretty high, and he's not really good at wrapping up. He doesn't like lead with his helmet, but he's not good at wrapping. I can see a lot of people breaking tackles on him in the NFL with the way he tackles. And then level 3.5 play recognition. So yeah, pretty standard there. But yeah, I like him, and these are the 3 linebackers I really focused on. I would probably say, of course, if we're using Simmons, he's number 1. Kenneth Murray, I kind of talked myself out of it. At first, he was my 2, but I think Queen might be number 2, and then Murray would be number 3 for me. So, looking at some of the other guys that caught my eye, Troy Dye from Oregon really stood out to me. 6'4", pretty light, but a taller dude. It'll be interesting to see his combine numbers, but the biggest thing that stood off the screen, he's great at taking on blocks. He He knows how to shed blocks, and that's huge for me. And look, there's guys in the past that were great at that, and it was big points for me, and they didn't always pan out well. But for me as a coach, that's going to make my job a lot easier. A guy that knows how and has the mentality to get off blocks. He long arms. He keeps blockers off of him. If you put him on the edge in a blitz situation or a funky formation, he could set the edge. But he just knows how to defeat blocks in space, and that just helps him get more plays done. So I love that. Again, as a blitzer, I like him. You could bring him off the edge because he's longer. I think he just really has good hand usage overall. So no matter where you bring him from, it's not like he's just running into a brick wall. He's actually going to get off the block. I like his coverage ability. Now, he does have limited range. I don't think his hips are that great. But his coverage, he's good. I mean, he knows what he's looking for in zone. He doesn't just stare at the quarterback, but he knows when to break. I like him over the middle. And he looks for work. I like him in coverage as well. And so I think with a running back and tight end, he can match up in man coverage. Again, long arms. And, I think a competitor. So, yeah, I won't go into his numbers. But I really like Troy Dye. And then outside of him, Evan Weaver, I watched. Now, these few guys I didn't see a whole lot of. But because they didn't have a lot of game tape out. But Evan Weaver, I am close to saying I would love him. I would just have to see more. But his coverage ability is amazing. His zone coverage, it all starts with his break. Like I done the All-Pro series, talked about Kyle Fuller. And as a zone corner, that's the biggest thing he has is he breaks on the ball quick. And Weaver's not a corner, but for a linebacker, he breaks on the ball well, and he's very aware. He knows where routes are going. He knows how to undercut it. He plays the quarterback's eyes well, so he was a big plus in coverage as IQ-wise. I don't know that he's athletic enough to be a plus in coverage, like all around, but as a IQ, he's pretty smart. And I think of it like Nick Kwiatkowski, for those that watch the Bears. Where he's just not athletic, but you saw when he played this year that he prepares well enough to where he can be impactful in the coverage game. And so I could see Evan Weaver really having that type of impact. But yeah, I like his change of direction, but I don't know that he's super fast. As a blitzer, I say he's above average, nothing special. I like his ability to take on blocks. He uses very good hands and he's physical, so I like that. And I say he can cover running backs in man coverage. I don't know that he's staying with any tight ends. I don't know that his man coverage would be that great ever because he's just not that athlete. But I do think his zone coverage would be a big plus. So yeah, Evan Weaver, I was really intrigued by. And Logan Wilson out of Wyoming, I didn't get to see a lot of him, but I was very intrigued by watching him as well. Kind of the same thing as Weaver, not super athletic, but I like his intangibles. So I'm sure there's a long list of linebackers I didn't get to, but those are kind of the guys I looked at. All right, so let's jump over to the real grade. We are doing the Houston Texans. 2017 draft. And again, if you don't know, I always usually say 3 years to grade a player or grade a draft class. And so we're looking back 3 years. Houston Texans. So we'll just go down the line. Let's see. With 7 guys. First round pick, Deshaun Watson. The quarterback, obviously still their quarterback. Zach Cunningham, linebacker who starts for them. Dante Foreman, who was 3rd round, was with them for a few years, did some things, but out of the league. Julian Davenport was with them till this season. He's now with the Dolphins, but he does start for them for whatever that's worth. Carlos Watkins is a rotational or indoor starter for them. I know he does get snaps on the D line. Treston DeCow is out of the league, I believe now. And Kyle Fuller, not that Kyle Fuller, but the center, who is also out of the league now. So, 7 players. Out of the 7, you have 3 that are still on the team. And out of those 3, all give significant contribution, we'll say that. There's some people that would argue Deshaun Watson's a star. I'm not saying he's a star. I don't think there's any stars out of the 3 you have. Out of the 4 that are no longer on the team, 1 is still in the league, and he's starting, and that means something. But 2 guys that are out of the league were 5th and 7th round picks, so, you know, But that 3rd round pick on Foreman, and he's out of the league, that kind of stings. Now, for me, I was a Foreman fan, and I think I definitely understand. Now, of course, the running back market, 3rd round, that might be a little rich for some people, and I think the value has just increased. So, like, before, it's like 3rd round, that was the edge of value, or like premium. That was like, okay, 2nd round is really where premium stops. Now, 4th round is kind of like middle of the 4th is kind of premium at these times. And so 3rd round, to have a running back, to not have him in the league, that definitely hurts. Your quarterback hit so far, top 15 pick though, so you expect that. 2nd round linebacker, you expect that. Watkins in the 4th round is a good pickup, but he's just kind of a nose. He's a rotational guy. Yeah, that 3rd round pick really hurts. So I think I've done this like the last handful of times, but I'm going to go with a C+ here because I can't knock you for getting starters for your 1st and 2nd round and definitely one in the 4th, but nobody's doing anything on a crazy level. And then that 3rd round pick really hurts as well. So I'm going to go with a C+. Yeah, tell me what you think. Go to the comment section. Let me know what you think about these linebackers. Let me know what you think about the position of linebackers. Share it around, get the conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you for listening.